Let's get cooking. In this video, I'm going to share with you some really simple snack and lunch ideas that are healthy and super budget friendly, so stick around. Hello friends and welcome back to Simple Essentials. My name is Emmy, and if you are new here, in this channel we talk about budgeting, meal prepping, organizing your life, simplifying your life really. And this video is part of a budget meal planning challenge that I did, which I will link up here for you if you haven't seen that already, so you can see kind of what my budget was for this challenge and how I set this grocery budget challenge up. So feel free to watch that video if you haven't already seen it. But in today's video, I'm going to share with you some really simple recipes. They're all going to be linked below. And the reason I want to share this is because looking back a few years ago, I did not really enjoy cooking. I like eating healthy. I have a fairly active lifestyle and do, not heaps of sports, but I do try to do a fair bit of exercise. And I also really like making things from scratch because I think a part of simplifying your life is actually having less processed stuff in your life. And yes, it takes a little bit longer to cook and bake and do things yourself, but I have actually especially the last 2 or 3 years, really started to enjoy that. And thanks to some really beautiful people here on the internet, especially Denise over at Sweet Peas and Saffron. A couple of the recipes linked below have come from her channel, and she doesn't know me, but I really love her videos and her recipes because they're really healthy, budget friendly, and very, very simple to make. So without further ado, I'm going to show you what we had for lunch this week. We had one chickpea salad, which is my own creation. I really love making salads. And we're also going to do a zucchini oven bake, which has come from Sweet Peas and Saffron. And on the weekends, we also do kind of eggs on toast. So I'll show you that, even if it's super simple, but it's something that we often have for lunch when we're camping or on the weekend when we're just hanging around the house. So let's dive in to the cooking. So this here is one of our go-to snacks in our family, and it is rice cakes, which are gluten-free because my partner is gluten-free, and we normally have some kind of side of either celery sticks or carrot sticks. This week we did carrot sticks. And I'm also going to show you here how to make hummus. It's actually really, really easy and quite affordable. So this is all you need to make your hummus. And you'll see the tahini there on the side. It's an optional extra which you need to make proper hummus, but I actually have made this recipe in a pinch once when I was out of tahini, so it does work without it. But I'm going to show you how I make it. I happen to have some tahini in the fridge. So what I'm doing first is I take my chickpeas and I drain the liquid off and leave that on the side. I chop up a couple of cloves of garlic. You can be as bold as you like. I'll link the recipe below for you if you want to follow the actual recipe, but I sometimes wing it depending how much garlic I feel like having on that particular day. So you chuck your garlic, chop it up a little bit, helps a bit because we're going to blend all this in just a little bit. And then you grab your cooking oil. I have made this with vegetable oils, but I must say the olive oil tastes the best, and that's what the recipe calls for. If you don't have olive oil, it does still work, but I will say it tastes a whole lot better. And this is the tahini. Here in Australia, you normally find this in the health food aisle. It does cost a little bit to get a whole jar of it, but it normally lasts quite a while in the fridge, so it makes a lot. So it's a little bit of an investment. I hadn't budgeted for it in this budget meal prep, and like I said, once I made this hummus without it because I was in a pinch, and it tasted just fine. You do need some good old lemon juice though. The recipe calls for fresh lemon, but you can do kind of what you want. And with the spices, I talked about it in the last video, but building up a bit of a spice cabinet is kind of important. So even if you just buy one spice a week or every couple of weeks, so you've got some cumin and some coriander in this recipe. Again, if you are in a pinch, you can obviously substitute things, but if you like the taste of hummus, this is your go-to guy. I have actually thrown a bit of chili in once, which was also really tasty, and then a little bit of salt as well. And now we're going to take the chickpea liquid from the can and pour in. I normally start with pouring about half of it or so into my little blender. and blend it up with a stick blender. I haven't tried to make this without a blender. If you manage to do that, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But you'll see at this point it's really runny because we don't actually have the chickpeas in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to chuck in the actual chickpeas now that we've blended all the other ingredients together. And I almost managed to make this look really awkward, or I drip like hummus juice all over my kitchen as I'm cooking. But yeah, you want to get all of your chickpeas from a small can into the blender and give that a good old blenderoo. You may need to add at this point a little bit more of the chickpea liquid, so it depends on what sort of texture you like your hummus to be. It will be more runny as you are putting it into a container and putting it in your fridge, but it tends to thicken a little bit when it's sat in the fridge for a little while. So normally it's not going to be quite as runny when you store it in your fridge. So I make this hummus quite often. Like I said, I've made it without tahini once. It wasn't quite as tasty, but let me know if you have any sneaky tricks how to make hummus or hummus tasting dip without adding the tahini, which is a sesame product, I believe. But that's essentially it. So that's what we had for snacks this week, and it was so tasty, and it really goes well with crackers and all sorts of things. Next up is the zucchini oven bake. It's kind of like a frittata, but probably a little bit less eggy or a little bit less milky. You kind of see the texture at the end of this recipe. But this is pretty much what you need. The recipe is linked below as well. The recipe calls for kale, I believe, but I'm not a huge fan of kale, so I have substituted that with spinach from my mixed salad bag that I got at my grocery haul. So I'm going to start with my zucchini. I quite like zucchini, and so does my partner, so I normally do a little bit more zucchini than the recipe calls for. But as you may know, there's a lot of liquid in zucchini, and for this dish to taste good, you actually need to squeeze some of that liquid out. So what you want to do is grate up all your zucchini, however many bits you're going to make. And you can use paper towel for this as well. I normally just use a cloth or a kitchen towel because I don't really like wasting paper if I don't have to. But you're going to see here how much liquid there is into zucchinis once they've been grated up. So that's basically a big lump of zucchini, and then you just squeeze. And don't be alarmed, your cloth or whatever you use will get quite green because zucchini colors a lot, much like cucumber. But the green will come out in the wash, I promise. But maybe don't use your finest tablecloth if you are a little bit worried about it. But you can see here, I give it a really good squeeze because you do not want that liquid in the bake or it's all going to get really soggy. So you can see there how much I managed to get out of these bits of zucchini. And when the liquid is out of the bowl, you want to obviously pop your zucchini back. One thing I absolutely love about this recipe, and again it is linked below, is that it's all in one bowl. How lovely is that? It's a very simple cleanup. It's not really any mess or anything difficult. So yeah, my zucchini's in the bowl, and then I'm cutting up one brown onion. I've never tried this with another type of onion, but if you had another one at home that you wanted to use, you probably could try with that. So, but yeah, brown onion is usually very inexpensive and it's a bit of a staple in our household. I normally buy big bags of onion, whether I'm doing a grocery haul or not. So just chopping up your onion. By the way, do you also like people chopping up food? I like watching how other people cut onions and things like that. I always learn something about how to do something more effectively. Freya popping by in the background there as well. And now we're going to look at a couple of things that are optional for this dish, but I decided to throw them in anyway. I had a sad half capsicum in my fridge that needed to be used up, and I had some fresh parsley from a pot that I have out on our little outside area. And that's actually a really good budget tip for you as well. If you do have a little bit of budget to plant your own herbs, especially parsley grows incredibly easy, at least here in Australia, even when it's quite cold here in Melbourne where I live in the winter. So fresh herbs really add a lot to dishes if you are on a budget, so that is one of my little tips that I recommend. And then I'm going to do my spinach here. So I picked these spinach leaves out of the mixed salad bag that I got in my grocery haul. and I'm just going to cut them up. The recipe calls for kale, which is not a huge favorite of mine, so I chose to use spinach instead. I have also tried using frozen spinach, but I would recommend that you thaw it and get rid of a little bit of that excess liquid that is in frozen spinach, otherwise it will get pretty soggy when you bake it in the oven. So in it goes. You can cut it as fine as you want. I'm usually not very patient, so but yeah, in it goes. And then I'm going to cut up my capsicum. So you can add pretty much most vegetables to this dish. I have added capsicum, I've added mushrooms, I've even added, you know, if I've had a little bit of sausage or a little bit of ham or something that left over. You can cut it up in small little pieces and mix it in as well for extra protein. So it's a really versatile dish, and even if it is sort of egg frittata based, you can see that there's a lot of other things in it, and it's really healthy and very inexpensive as well, actually. So yeah, just chucking all my stuff in, still the same bowl, so you don't have to make a huge mess. And therein goes my flour. I'm using gluten-free flour for this recipe because my partner's gluten-free, but you can use any flour that you want. And also, same goes for the milk. So for this grocery haul I did regular milk. I've made this with almond milk and other types of milk before, and it tastes just fine. And then we're going to do the eggs. So I had a big carton of eggs in my grocery haul. And I think I used about 7 eggs in this recipe because the eggs were quite small. Baking powder was not on my list. This is an optional extra. I have made it with or without. I find that when you do it with baking powder, if you happen to have it in your pantry, it does rise a little bit better. It gets a bit fluffier. But if you don't have baking powder, like I said, I have made it without before and it has turned out just fine. Now we're going to get onto our spices, and spices, like we know, you do need to kind of build up your spice cabinet over time. But what we've got in here, we've got some basil, we've got some dill, and I'm also going to add in a second some oregano and some salt. And spices is one of those things, they last for so long and they're really, really good. You don't need to buy the biggest jar of anything if you don't use a lot of spices in your cooking, but definitely do start to build up. Like I think I said in my last video, that you can do even things like buying, you know, mixed Italian herbs would have been just fine in this recipe if you didn't have all the individual spices that I just showed you. And now we are going to give this a big stir, but of course we need to put the cheese in. And one key tip is compare prices on your cheese. In this budget haul, I bought a block of cheese that I grated this cheese myself, but I also used it for sandwiches and other things. But do compare the price on grated and cheese that is just in a block. So this is what it looks like in the end. Doesn't look like much, but I can assure you it was incredibly tasty, and we had this for lunch a couple of days and it's one of our absolute favorites. So what we're going to make now is my chickpea salad, and this can be varied many times over with all sorts of different ingredients. I'm using chickpeas as a hero today because it's really inexpensive and it is very healthy. So what you want to start with this salad is your chickpeas. So you want to drain them off first so there's no liquid left in the can, and then pour them into a bowl. And the key I've found with chickpeas is to mush them up a little bit first, because chickpeas are round and they'll just roll off your fork and things like that. So to get them to absorb some of the awesome, simple and cheap flavors that we're going to add to the salad, you need to mush them up. So use a fork, a potato masher, whatever you want. Maybe not a blender because it might make it more like liquidy. And now that we've got it all mashed up, we're going to start to add some seasoning and some flavor. So I'm going to use my Greek yogurt. I bought a small tub in this grocery haul and it is good for all sorts of things. So I quite often use it instead of sour cream as well. Sometimes it can be cheaper, depending where you are, it can be cheaper than sour cream. Dijon is an optional extra. I happen to have it in my fridge. It was not in my grocery haul, but it's not mandatory. I just really like the flavor of mustard. So again, like with your spices, build up a little pantry if you can. Lemon juice was in my budget, so I'm going to add that. I really love adding lemon juice instead of oils sometimes to things. I actually did not end up using the olive oil that you see in the background for this recipe because the dressing turned out really beautiful without it. But if you don't like Greek yogurt or you don't have it on hand, you can easily replace the Greek yogurt with the olive oil or whatever oil you have on hand in your house. So just adding a little bit of good old salt and pepper, and then it kind of looks like this. So it looks, I don't know, a bit coleslaw maybe. But now we're going to add the other bits and bobs. So I've got a can of corn here that I've drained. So just popping that in there. And then I'm going to add some of my salad. So the spinach leaves that I used for my last recipe came out of this mixed salad thing. So just tearing that salad up a little bit and giving it a good little mix and trying not to spill everything on the floor because I like to spill things when I cook for some reason. So yeah, just blending that all up. And the reason I haven't put the carrot in yet is that I do like to kind of add the carrot more towards the end when the chickpea and the yogurty dressing and everything is kind of mixed in properly. So you want to peel your carrot and grate it up. So I'm not going to show you 2 minutes of me grating carrots because that's not that much fun to watch, but this is just a little grater that I got from IKEA that works really well. And then when you've got your carrot added as well, for some reason grated carrot, by the way, tastes so much better than sliced carrot. I don't know why, but it is worth the extra effort. If you are standing there going, I'll just cut my carrots, Emmy, grate them. It is so beautiful and so sweet and so tasty. This salad turned out great. This was a good few serves for both my partner and I for lunch for a few days. Super tasty. You can add egg, you can add avocado, you can add all sorts of things to this, and it is just absolutely beautiful. This one, I didn't actually film this, but I'm happy to make a video about this in the future. I do bake my own bread. It's not gluten-free, but it's a beautiful crusty 4-ingredient bread that I found somewhere here on YouTube actually, I think, and I really, really like it. It's a beautiful recipe. If you're interested to get the recipe, feel free to comment below and I'm more than happy to share it because it's dead easy to make and I'm not a master baker. But having bread on hand is just really, really easy to kind of make snacks and things like that. And I do like to boil eggs as well. This is my favorite type of egg, so nice and solid white, but a little bit runny in the middle. So this with a piece of toast, a little bit of cheese on top is a really nice lunch, snack, or breakfast. So just because you're on a budget does not mean that you don't get to have treats. So I made sure to budget for some popcorn, which is one of my favorite snacks for Friday night movies and things like that. This is such an affordable option. It's only 49 cents per 100 gram in my store, and it's probably similar where you live. It's much, much cheaper than the other alternatives. You make it with some oil in a pan on your stove and add a little bit of salt or whatever you prefer later on. And it's interesting to compare this to your standard microwave popcorn brand. This was a 3-pack, I think, but it still came down to over $3 per 100 grams. So that is significantly more than if you make the popcorn yourself. And there you go. Simple recipes, really healthy, stores great in the fridge. If you haven't already watched my video on food storage, because a really big part of meal prepping is having good storage containers and things like that for your food. So I'm going to link that video below with how to store your food to make it last longer as well. But that's what we were having for lunch this week. We work a mix of working from home and working in the office. So these are really easy to bring with you, chuck in the microwave at work. And the zucchini slice actually can be had whether you heat it up for a few minutes in the microwave or you have it cold is perfectly fine as well. It's almost like a frittata kind of slice. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed those recipes. If you have any questions or any other favorite recipes that you like to make for lunch, feel free to leave them in the comment box below so we can learn and get inspired from each other. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video.